Okay, we're on the 7-point mind training. Point 7. So, just to recap. First one, preliminary practices. Second one, the main practice, which is really the whole point of Buddhist practice, is these cultivate the two bodhicittas, the mind of awakening itself, the liberation that we have this opportunity for. All of Buddhism is focused on this one very clear liberation. To know ourselves, to know reality, to awaken. So these two bodhicittas, ultimate and relative. And so everything in here is for that. Any of those Buddhist texts is for that. So that's the main practice. Preliminary really creates the conditions for it, point 1. Point 2 says, well, this is what we're here for. The third one is, well, how do we achieve this in this hustle and bustle of the lives that we have? So the third one is transforming adverse conditions into the path. How do we take the challenges that we're faced with daily and transform them into an opportunity to grow, to know ourselves, to cultivate bodhicitta? So that's really, within the 7-point mind training, the real unique facet of this particular method, is that everything that we come in contact with becomes an opportunity, grist for the mill for enlightenment. And it's easy to forget that, because we're looking for, when can I go meditate? This cushion's not very comfortable. The kids are noisy in the hallway. There's all these things, rather than, oh, good, there's some noise. That'll help me focus. Cushion. Yeah, I got a cushion to sit on. I got some time to meditate. Maybe I don't have time to meditate now, but I need to attend to this person in front of me. And I can turn that into a Dharma practice. So transforming these conditions, these challenging conditions, into the path to awakening, for they in fact can expedite the path if we train wisely. So preliminaries, the main practice, transforming adverse conditions into the path. And then the fourth point is one I love to teach on. When I travel, I often teach on it, is the synthesis of practice for a single lifetime. So how to take all of this and really integrate everything into the path of Dharma, of awakening, the synthesis of practice for a single lifetime. These 5 powers is the primary point there. And the 5th point is the measure of our mind training, which for me I think is just so key, because so often people are doing a practice, but it's kind of hard to tell if you're getting anywhere. And a lot of times we don't always use an accurate measurement. One of the most common ways we measure incorrectly is when we measure our meditation. Sit down, meditate. My mind was all over the place. Then I get up and go, that was a terrible meditation. Really? Did you follow the directions? Yeah. If your mind wandered, did you bring it back? Yeah. Sounds like a pretty good meditation. So what I'm doing is I'm training my attention to come here. And then if we look at, for example, with meditation, rather than micromanaging whether I was, focused the whole time or whether my mind wandered, over the period of 6 months of meditating, is my meditation helping me be more attentive in my life, more present in my life, more able to be present in my life? Is it allowing me to reduce some of the mental afflictions, resentments, and so forth? Well, that might be a more accurate measurement over 6 months, yeah. Even though when I sit down, my mind's busy. So the measure of having trained the mind fundamentally is a really thoughtful way of approaching, are you on a path that is eliminating suffering? So we might look back from when I started my practice over a period of time and go, do I have a little more inner peace? Do I have some more sense of well-being? Well, then we're making progress. And so it's important to check on this, because if my practice is making me more irritable and more stressed out, and then either I'm doing it wrong or it's not working. Something's amiss here. That's not the point of Dharma, to stress us out. So I think that's such a wonderful piece, that 0.5 to put in. Here's the measure of mind training. 0.6 are the precepts. These are similar to vows, not a formal vow taking in a sense, but a precept in the sense of these are the commitments that I can engage in that I know will help counteract really unhealthy mental states. And now the 7th point that we've been on is called the practices of mind training. There's 20 of them. So if you think of it as best practices, when you go to the doctor or something, they give you a medication or something, they're also going to tell you a few other things. It'd probably be good to, cut down on the ice cream, or, do a little more exercise. They're going to give you these best practices. They're going to give you some things that are going to really help that medicine or help us recover. So these practices are, in that sense, a way of helping us engage in our busy life in ways that are most conducive to the mind of awakening. These are best practices. And so with the 20 of them, it's kind of hard to hold all 20 in your mind all the time. So it's recommended that you read a couple of them and then kind of work on getting a couple of them going. And then, maybe a couple more. And what happens is you'll work your way through 20 of them over time. But any one of them, if you worked with it for about a week or so, you're going to notice a significant difference. So these are best practices. And we left off, I think we're like halfway through. I think we're in the 11th one here. Be endowed with the 3 inseparables. Okay, so we really want to cultivate and endow ourselves with these 3 inseparables, and that's the way it's put here: inseparable of spiritual practice of body, speech, and mind. Body, speech, and mind. So here, if you think of what happens in our life, we might come to a Dharma teaching. And hi. We might come to a Dharma teaching. We might sit down in the front row, might be here, yeah. We come to a Dharma teaching. And, but what was going on before I came to the Dharma teaching? How much of my mind was on Dharma? How much of my mind was on worldly things to do, stuff I was worried or stressed about, or maybe in traffic going to Dharma, Carbondale is not a big traffic issue, but in LA or different places. But our mind could be, just caught up, worldly stuff. And then, okay, I'm coming to Dharma teaching now. Oh, right. Here's a path to awakening. Here is an opportunity to transform my mind, to eliminate all mental afflictions, to remember I am much more than every single crazy thought that arises in my mind. And I think, wow, that's pretty important. And then what happens when I leave a Dharma teaching? Yeah, you could pretty quickly get right back to the worldly life, things to do, stuff going on. So this one is with the 3 inseparables, is to constantly not be separated from spiritual practice of body, speech, and mind throughout my day, in all my activities and whatever I'm doing. So that whatever I'm doing is, I'm not separated from realizing that this is a moment that'll never come again, and a moment to cultivate merit and wisdom, a moment to bear in mind this opportunity of practice, body, speech, and mind. And so within the three practices of the body. Tibetans are quite skillful at this. Tibetans, you'll see a lot of ritual around Tibetan practices. We have very colorful things. We have, water bowl offerings, and we have, a lot of ritual at the monastery. And, every night, we're all walking around doing our malas. We're doing korwa. We're doing circumnavigating. We're going around stupas. Prostrations are going on. You'll see people doing that in the mornings. These are all practices of the body. They're using the body to be of service, to make offerings. There's even a method here when we make offerings. There's these have seven water bowls, and they can represent the 7-limb practice. And as you do it, you do it with a very mindful way of offering these. And you think of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas being present, and you're doing these offerings, and with each bowl, there's always a little water in it. You don't put an empty bowl up there, and so you go from left to right. You fill them up, and there's even a teaching on when you pour. You pour like a vase, so it's a little drizzle, and then faster, so it gets wider, and then you taper it off, and then you fill it evenly all the way across, and then you put the bowls evenly. It's a beautiful practice. But do the Buddhists care? Whether you have it lined up just so? No. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it for our own mind stream. Of what does it do when I, for example, in my sense, envisioning all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and I'm taking the time to mindfully bring them present, and as though they're precious guests. That when I pour that water just so, and the first one, it's the limb of prostration. I'm prostrating, with calling to mind all their immeasurable qualities. Pouring the second one, filling it up, all the virtues coming in, gifts and offerings of all the virtue, myself and all others, for the benefit of all sentient beings. I'm pouring that up just so. Bringing up the third one, pouring it not recollecting, the negative actions that I've been engaged in, and really seeking to not engage in them anymore, to transform myself. So as you go through each water, you're going through these 7 limbs, you're filling it just nicely as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. By the time it's filled up, then you light a candle, awaken mind, and a little incense. My mind is very different when I'm done doing that than when I started. It's a transformative effect. It has this really rich way of doing it. And if I'm doing it with the thought of creating a space for all sentient beings that can provide teachings for them, well, there's a really wonderful thing. So that would be the body, this Dharma practice. Now, can I also make serving meal to my friends a Dharma practice? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. That I'm having friends over for a meal. I might be baking them bread, like that guy does. And I can be, as I'm baking this bread, thinking about all the sentient beings that are responsible for all these things that come to place, and think what a gift it is that I have this to nourish me, and that I can help and nourish others. And so as I'm baking the bread, and as I have friends over, I offer them bread. Really, may this help them be well and beneficial, and calling to mind with gratitude all the other beings that were possible for this. And now a meal becomes a Dharma practice with the body. Service, right? Cleaning. Today was, Stephanie was in here today. And she's going to check on that fern. That fern over there on the left. It's a nice fern, isn't it? So she donated it, but she wants to make sure it's properly cared for. So she comes in and she squirts it down, checks it out. I leave the room, I come back, she's cleaning up, and just making the Dharma Center nice. So a Dharma practice with the body. At our temple in Long Beach, we used to all take turns, and who gets to clean the bathrooms and all that, and just be of service. So that's in a Dharma Center. Actions of body, though, can also be helping someone. Right? It can be helping someone. You know. But not just always just helping someone just because you see someone who needs help. But really a desire to be of most benefit. You know. Now it's a spiritual practice. Now it's, you know, I really want you to be well, and how can I be of help? So bringing that level of mind into our daily practice, we're not separated. We're not separated. We're traveling here, and maybe someone's driving a little fast, or whatever's going on there. We might think, well, I hope they get where they need to be. Hope they get where they need to be safe. Well, I'm bringing Dharma practice into that. So the idea then is that if I can bear in mind that I am in this journey with all these other beings, that our interactions are connected, that we're all here, you know, the meal I have was because of so many. The building we're in was because of so many. The fact I can drive on a road and be in traffic is because people built the roads. You know, my life becomes a spiritual practice because I'm bearing in mind the interdependence that's arising as I engage with each person. Speech. So again, going back to the idea of prayers, right? People say prayers, and we do malas, and in our tradition we recite text, you know, so the Dharma reciting text. Well, when I'm reciting a mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, for all sentient beings, like we do here, what's my mind not doing? It's not caught up in anger and resentment and jealousy, right? So mantra itself means mind protection. Mind protection, that's what it's for. To protect the mind, to focus the mind, to put the mind in a virtuous mental state. Prayers can be these formal things, and if I'm praying for someone who's having difficulties, my mind is really of care and concern and in a virtuous mental state. That's what's happening. Likewise, just wishing someone, may you be well. Is that not a prayer? May you be well. May you be happy. How can I help you? Is that not now a Dharma practice of speech? How can I help you? How can I be of benefit? Is that not a speech, Dharma? So while sometimes people get focused on just these formal practices like, you know, the prostrations or the altar or the mantras, we can engage in our lives without being separated from a spiritual practice of body, speech, and mind by bringing the mind of Dharma into our activities of body, of speech, the motivation, the intention, the bearing in mind, the empty nature of these interactions, the interdependence of them. And that each of these interactions is an opportunity for me to cultivate the mind of awakening for all sentient beings. There's no event that I'm engaged in that is not an opportunity for me to cultivate the mind of awakening. It's just whether or not my mind's there or not. And so then the mind, so body, speech, mind. And so mind is remembering that. Mind is always seeking to bear in mind the cultivation of bodhicitta, of the mind of awakening, and to be able to use that and work with my mind as I engage in this. Every interaction, if I notice some agitation, nervousness, anxiety, even joy, how can I use this in a way that is a path to awakening, cultivating bodhicitta? How can I bear in mind their impermanent nature and utilize my interaction to realize the nature of self in the world I live in? You know, and we can do that. Eating a meal is an interesting way of doing that. It could be a physical action, but you know, at what point, you know, wow, that's really a delicious. What should I pick today? Apple pie just popped in my mouth real quick. So delicious apple pie. It's my apple pie. It's my pie. It's my apple pie. And so having a piece of apple pie could be a very attachment-oriented, samsara-enriching experience that keeps me trapped. Or an apple pie can be an opportunity to recognize the nature of attachment, of desire, of impermanence, of all those that helped, so I could have this taste of apple pie, to remember that the joy that I have as it comes into me is dependent upon all these conditions that gave rise for this moment, and it's temporary. And this apple pie, as I eat it and swallow it, it stops being apple pie, doesn't it? And at some point it actually becomes me. At what point does apple pie stop being apple pie and then when it's me? And now it's me. And later parts of it come out of me. Then clearly it's not me anymore. Doesn't look so delicious either. But what a cycle of impermanence, of knowing, of understanding that even that joy of that apple pie and how delicious it is, to enjoy it, to know it's a temporary pleasure, and that when I'm really hungry, plain old piece of bread is pretty darn delicious. So in such a way, we can recognize food as a practice. Watch the impulse and the desires and how I crave it, or just the noticing of the smell of popcorn. How that suddenly can get someone hungry. I wasn't hungry before. I was fine. Popcorn. Rumor has it that Disneyland blows the smell of popcorn all over the place. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know it for sure. When I grew up out there, that's what they said they do. So you're always wanting to buy popcorn. Well, what if I had this mind that was inseparable, that realized that impulses and desires are what the mind does, but we usually act upon them as though they're true, without being able to observe an impulse and a desire as an impulse and a desire. Am I really hungry because I smelled popcorn? Or was I quite content until I smelled popcorn? And what if I didn't eat the popcorn? Would I still be hungry? Or, and in 20 minutes from now, would I just be caught up in doing something else, not thinking about the popcorn? So this is a practice where we start to notice the cravings, the attachments of the mind, and the aversions. This is going to be so terrible, and that's going to be so great, and I'm hungry, and I'm this, and I'm that. And we just get caught up in it. And that's why so often when we leave a Dharma center, or we close a book, or we finish our meditation practice, we get very separated from a spiritual life. And we enter into a worldly life, caught up in desire and habit and attachment and aversion and upset and nervousness and anger, and it's all built on these things. And we're not able to be inseparable. And so this is where we want to work on being really infused, body, speech, and mind, with the Dharma. The Dharma is my life. You can see where it's a good practice. And when it is a practice, right? It takes a little time to think of that. But one practice is not that difficult to do, is to, just before you eat, take a little time to reflect upon all the conditions that gave rise to this meal, and what this meal means to me, and who am I eating this meal with, and can I eat this meal so it can nourish me, so I can help others. I could do that before every single meal. I could take a moment. Think about that. And that's a step. Getting into a car. I'm about to embark upon a drive in a big metal machine with an engine. And there's animals and humans out there. And, maybe I can drive this car in a very alert and caring way so that others are safe. now driving can be a nice thing. Rather than I need to get somewhere. How many times have we got in the car, drove there, and we don't even know how we drove there? Like, we didn't pay attention to what was going on. I mean, we stopped at the stop signs and stuff, but, you know, my mind was somewhere else the whole time I was driving. You know? So this practice of really making our life our practice of keeping it separable and not being too tight. He makes a point in the text about we can make our Dharma practice too tight, and then, as I mentioned before, then we become stressed, right? I'm doing my water bowl offerings, and I spilled the water. How mindless of me, and Buddhas are going to strike me dead or something. And, you know, this thing's not lined up just so. And then, you know, this nice, beautiful way that I'd want to pour, it doesn't pour that way. It spills out. And now, you know, now it's a stress instead of this wonderful, nice little practice. I go to sit down and I go to meditate, and yeah, my mind's busy, or I think, boy, I should be meditating more than I do, and you know, and so to really know that our practices are important, and the formal ones help support the other ones, but how I live my life fundamentally is my practice. Not just sitting in meditation, not whether I set up a nice altar, say a nice prayer, pull out the Dharma book. You know, it's how am I treating my neighbor? How am I treating that person that is hard to deal with? A lot of times we think they are in the way. And you know what we forget? They are the way. People and events are not in the way, they are the way. If something's thwarting you, that is the way. It's not blocking the way. And that's a profound understanding, that people and things that get in our way, they're not in the way. They are the way. That is what we are. That is our work in that moment. So, practicing that, very, very helpful. So, the idea here then is not be separated from this, well, to be endowed with the three inseparable: spiritual practice, body, speech, and mind. I think he said everything I just said. Always meditate on those who make you boil. Always meditate on those who make you boil. What do you think that means? Right off the bat. Kind of seems like the people make you angry, right? But he makes a point here, and the text on this practice, this is the 10th practice, it's obscure. Okay, so trying to make sense of it in Tibetan, so he's really trying to work with making it precise, but it's obscure, and he's going to make a point that one of his teachers, he remembered one of his teachers said that a very learned Lama would be able to give 10 or 15 justifiable interpretations of the same text. So a really learned Lama can take any text and give about 10 or 15 very justifiable. This is what it means. And really good Lamas will tell different people different things, because they're speaking to your mind. They're going, well, this is what this is what it would mean for you, and this is what it would mean for you. And so he's just making a point that this one's a little tough. It could mean a lot of things. But he says one interpretation suggested by the commentary is rich in meaning, that is to meditate on people with whom we come in frequent and intimate contact with. So people make us boil. It's not just people make us angry. Well, people we're in real contact, our loved ones, our relationship, our family, right? There's a big connection there. So they're going to be someone that we meditate on, someone that we're going to want to work with really well. And so it's not always just the people that make us angry, the ones that we have frequent contact with. And also the people that we really admire, like a spiritual teacher he puts in there, a mentor, parents, that we have a special karmic connection with these people, and that we really want to make sure that our relationships with them are as healthy as possible, as meaningful as possible, and not take them too lightly. And so boil then has a bigger context than anger. It has this context of real care, concern, connection with. And often we will find that it's easier to treat people we don't know better than the people we love and care for. It's a fascinating dynamic in our lives. You know, someone we don't know, we can be real polite, open the door, help them out with something. You know, my wife wants me to carry that thing. What are you, nuts? It's your turn to do that. You know, just this whole thing, right? We can take for granted, you know, the people in our lives, and but someone we don't know, we want them to think well of it. You know, we're pretty easy. And you know, I'm in the recovery community, and so a lot of people in that community, they sponsor people, and if you call anyone at 2 a.m., I mean, they're there for you. They'll answer the phone, and so often it is easier for someone helping a newcomer finding recovery to be there for them at 2 in the morning, or even to tell them, you know, on the phone, you know, I love you, I'm there for you. And your wife's down the hallway going, when's the last time you told me that? What's up with that? So it's a really good point, the ones that make us boil. And it's not just about relationships. It also has to do with, as one may guess, people that may have some resentment, you know, that we really want to be thoughtful about our interactions with them as well. So just noticing that we really want to bring more attention to the more connected personal relationships and the ones that create some sense of energy within us. Because the people we don't know so well, doesn't really matter that much, right? They're gone in a minute. It's not that big a deal. So to be really caring and thoughtful about this. And the point is always that when we're meditating on those who make us boil, it is not to appease them and everything. It's always around what is the healthiest way to interact with them. You know, for this mind of awakening, for the the benefit of all concerned, and that is this measurement is within these interactions. What's the healthiest way, the most beneficial, the most compassionate way to engage with them in ways that are always geared towards a path of awakening, of being of highest benefit. And being a doormat is not being of highest benefit. We often get confused there. So any questions or thought before I go to the next one? If anything just pops up, chime in and go there. So that was the 10th. We're on the 11th. Practice, and this is, do not rely upon other conditions. And this is really this beautiful thing I mentioned earlier about Lojong practice, is everything is practice. So we don't need to rely upon all the right conditions to do my practice. Everything's practice. Everything's opportunity. Don't get too caught up and dependent upon that. So there are other practices where you need conditions. If you want to go and achieve shamatha, that's going to be a practice. Well, you're going to need very specific conditions. You're going to need to prepare for that. You're going to need a nice, quiet place. You're going to need food and sustainable things. You're going to have to go be a hermit for a while. And that requires a lot. So a lot of Buddhist practice actually does require certain conditions. Retreats require certain conditions. The Lojong doesn't require any of those. Doesn't require any of those. Lojong is everything is the path. And how I interact with you is my practice. And we don't want to accumulate the mind that says, I need total quiet to meditate. Oh, I need the right cushions. I'm too tired in this way to do my practice. Or, all these things that happen in my mind, and my practice becomes this thing over here rather than whatever's in front of me is my practice now. And then, sometimes I was visiting with Jason earlier today, and some of you know Chris, who was here for the summer to help us out. So Chris he was a former monk, and he lived with me for a while, and check on time. So we gave him the room that was my meditation room, or not the meditation room, right? And so bedroom, and he comes up there. So normally I'd wake up and go up there, but he's sleeping, so I thought that would be inappropriate. So I would get up early and I would meditate on the couch downstairs. And so I would just usually get up early a little before him. I'd be sitting there meditating. He'd come downstairs. And, he's not tippy-toeing. He's just pounding downstairs, and he's banging around getting some coffee and things, and he'll pull his computer out, sit on the table in front of me, and do his work, And most people go, wow, that's pretty crazy. But I would laugh, because in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, like where I lived and where he lived, that's what you do. Somebody's doing their practice, their meditation. Yeah, that's what they're doing. But we've got other stuff to do. And it's just, the first time when I moved to India and I was there, just noise all the time and people doing stuff and prayers going around and people are doing practice. You'd walk in on them and they'd look up, you need something? And then they'd just go right back to their practice. And so basically it just brought me back to India. That, wow, I'm with another one of me, that he knows the deal, and he could feel comfortable and do his things, and I could practice, and it helped me focus more. I didn't need the ideal situation or this. That actually became the ideal situation. So in this way, we have to know that, I'm just not going to meditate because so-and-so's here. No, I can still meditate. And if I can't meditate, guess what my practice is? Patience. And patience with the person in front of me. And now I have a practice. So in this way, we don't rely on these outer circumstances to be just so and contingent on such things. Everything is practice. Everything is practice. Love you, Chris. In case you're watching. And this 12th practice just ties right in here. Let me just see if I skipped anything. You just say, we don't need to. There's no ground for procrastination in this practice. No way to ever say, I really want to practice mind training, but first of all, I have to ... That does not fit in these teachings. Because even the procrastination becomes the practice. Even the mind that says, tomorrow, that now becomes the practice. What's blocking me from being here now? All circumstances nurture this practice. We don't even need good health, let alone abundant food, lovely surroundings, and companions. All these things help, but we can implement mind training in the broadest spectrum of circumstances without waiting. So that's the real beauty of this text and these teachings. Just takes away all the blocks, all the barriers. And now we practice what is most important. So what's most important? It makes a point that right now, in this very lifetime, all the conditions are ripe. We have all the conditions for awakening. What's most important is cultivating bodhicitta, the mind of awakening. That's most important. Liberation. We have right now, in this very lifetime, the conditions ripen for awakening. And if you go through these old texts, they'll say that it's taken eons of lifetimes to have all of these conditions, to be here now, to be in this moment. We think of everything that came together so you could be in this room tonight. Whether you believe in past life or not, just even looking in this life, what were all the things that brought you to a text of awakening? And what were all the conditions that gave rise to this teaching? And how many before us that practiced this, that orally transmitted it, that spent 20 years in a cave, that did 100,000 prostrations, or all these practices, so that these teachings can be preserved and brought down and translated and taught from personal direct experience. So we could be in a room in Carbondale. There used to be a Silver Sun room, and before that some other room. To be in a Dharma center with all the conditions that gave ripening, so we can have the path of awakening, and a lineage of teachings unbroken in time, passed down. And we forget that sometimes when we think about what's on Netflix tonight. Yeah. They got, what they got is, it's like superheroes at Marvel. I'm probably going to mess it up, but they have those Daredevil and different shows that people watch. I know, I'm not cool, I'm out of the loop. But there was the Game of Thrones, there's one, right? I've always heard people talk about that. That was a big deal, Game of Thrones. Some people, is it over now? I think people are not. But anyway, like, wow, I could, I can talk all day about that. Want to talk about the mind stream of liberation, of freedom, of no more suffering, of actually eradicating, mental afflictions, and we can forget that stuff. So always practice what's most important. We have this lifetime right now, and we don't know how long. That's going back to preliminary practice. Will we be here tomorrow? Don't know. I don't know if my next day or my next life will come first. Who knows? Nobody does. But the delusion is that we will. And so we put things off. And so right now, all of these conditions are ripe. And always practice in this day, because we don't know how many of these days we have. Why am I waiting to bring the mind of Dharma into my interactions? Why am I waiting? Someday I'll go do that. Yeah. I'll go do my meditation after the Game of Thrones. And not to say someone can watch it again. I don't know, it's probably a great show. But then do we do the practice after the Game of Thrones? Or are we then too tired? So always practice what's most important. Don't let a day come and go, because it will never come again. All the ripe conditions that gave rise to you being here now, they're gone. We're in a new moment already. We're in a new moment already. And as I say that, you can sense, wow. And so the thing not to do is to beat ourselves up and go, well, what am I wasting all my time for? But rather, what am I wasting all my time for? What am I wasting my time for? Why am I spending so much of my time decorating samsara instead of eliminating it. I mean, that to me is the most fascinating thing that humans do. We're so busy creating stress, worry, and fear that we don't have any time to eliminate it. My life is all about creating stress, worry, fear, and the jobs and to-do lists. And I'm trying to decorate samsara, which is its very nature of suffering. And I'm so busy, I don't have time to meditate or to do practice or to eliminate the cause of my suffering. I'm way too busy creating suffering. I got stuff to do. And so much of our lives are spent decorating samsara, trying to get those little pleasurable moments, which actually create the desire and the attachment and the delusion, as opposed to just eliminating it and actually having a sense of well-being, a sense of peace, a sense of clarity, and that all my interactions, there's a sense of well-being in it. Wow, what a way to live. Yeah, it's doable. But if I only spend this amount of time on Dharma practice and this amount of time decorating samsara, what do you think is going to be my proclivity here? So that's why this practice is so great. Our practice in the morning to remind ourselves, what am I practicing most? Here's a day that will never come again. And in this day, how many opportunities will I have to cultivate compassion and wisdom? You know, so many. And what's more important than that? What's more important than wisdom, spiritual merit, compassion, bhajya? All those other moments will come and go, but that's this sense of well-being that's here. So always practice that. So if we make that in the morning and we bear it in mind, we can maybe bring one or two of these practices into our day. We're going to be ripening that mind. Best practices. And then my life becomes my practice. And that's a pretty good way to go. Now we're maximizing. I don't got to be that guy who does Dharma practice for an hour a day. You hear people? Yeah, I practice for an hour a day. 2 hours a day. Woohoo. You go, hey man, I can practice all day. So, practicing right now. As I cultivate the interdependence of water and the empty nature of the cup, and as it comes down, it healthy and well to be a benefit to others, or illustrating a point. All can be Dharma. So, not something we have to do in a corner, on a cushion. But those are formal practices that really support and become this great foundation to engage in this practice. Okay, well, let's do a dedication of our merit and wisdom for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us dedicate the merit and the wisdom that's accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness and well-being. May we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to recognize our true nature, to cultivate the mind of awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. All right, well, thank you all so much. Be well, try to stay out of trouble, and don't be inseparable of the three, body, speech, and mind. And thanks for joining online. Sorry about that. Good to see you.